You know, every time I've sat down to watch The Acolyte, I've ended up with this look of disgust, anger, frustration. Today's episode was different because I actually found myself smiling, which is crazy that Disney could surprise me by being so f***ing absurdly awful that I was laughing for most of the episode. Hi y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. We all thought it couldn't get any worse, but then they showed us what the power of many really looks like. It looks like the destruction of a franchise with a legacy that is almost 50 years long. I don't think spoilers matter, but I'm polite like that, so just know we're getting into spoilers right now. We kick off this episode on Brendok 16 years ago, so this episode is that flashback that we've been waiting to see, what it really is that happened. If anybody even gives a shit, I can't say I do. Sol and the rest of the Jedi, now including Carrie-Anne Moss, because this is a flashback, they're sifting through grass on this planet after apparently a pretty successful trip to Radio Shack, because it looks like the Wookiee Jedi is using a very cool early 90s metal detector to find maybe coins or gold teeth or the dignity that Star Wars once had. I don't know. Torbin, you know, that Jedi that offed himself by drinking poison willingly in the first few episodes of this series, he's a Padawan at this point, and he's bitching about the fact that he's dying to go back to Coruscant. They've been on this planet now for 7 weeks. The whole point of their mission is that they are looking for life, because this planet is basically in a system that has been desolate for years as a result of some kind of incident. So the fact that it's so lush and green, they're unsure as to why it is that this planet looks like this. Their theory as to why this planet is so suddenly lush is a vergence. A vergence, as explained in The Acolyte, is a concentration of force energy around a specific location that can create life. I wonder where this is going. Indara and Sol briefly get into it about Torbin being a punk because Sol doesn't really have the patience to deal with it, and Indara, who is ever wise and way more patient than everybody around her, reminds him that this is why she has a Padawan and he doesn't. Foreshadowing much? Sol travels through the forest and eventually happens upon little Osha and May, and it's that exact same scene that we saw in earlier episodes where May is trying to kill a bug and then they do that weird little hand thing. You know, they goof around, they get silly just like the twins from The Shining, and Sol is watching from behind trees and like the kind of guy who isn't allowed within 300 yards of a school. Anyways, Sol stalks them all the way back to this big stone building, which we later find out is an old abandoned mining building, and that's essentially where the witches have their coven. He watches that scene where Anastasia trains the girls. Again, a lot of this episode, at the very beginning at least, is the same that we've already seen, but we're now watching it with Sol's head blocking the frame. So if it wasn't bad enough the first time you watched it, now you get round 2 electric boogaloo. I'd also like to stress that he has literally infiltrated a coven of all-powerful witches who are connected to the Force, the thread, and none of them sense that he's in there. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not a space witch, and even I, when I've gone to the grocery store, have been able to notice, there's somebody looking at me while I'm trying to pick out what piece of carrot cake I'm taking home. But, you know, Disney scripts. Sol reports back to Indara, and he lets her know that he has happened upon a Force cult. Indara makes sure that he knows that these are not Night Sisters because of the fact that Night Sisters don't keep or train children. We've seen plenty of the Night Sisters in the Clone Wars animated series and also novels and comics, but apparently these are not the same because Disney had to rewrite history and create their own nonsense. Sol insists that they have to help the children because he already feels a connection. So instead, they essentially go down and infiltrate the Witches' Coven as a group. I want to point out here that every set piece in the Witches' Coven looks like it should be part of a queue in Disney World. I also want to point out that when they walk in, there's witches just standing there. Like, imagine trying to make this look intimidating, just... If I was one of those Jedi, I probably would have hung up my coat or a briefcase on one of these because they were basically just standing there like coat racks anyway. Anyways, Indara and Anastasia get into a pissing contest about the fact that Indara was looking for life on this planet but somehow never sensed the presence of these witches. Yeah, and you guys never sensed all the Jedi with their little ass metal detectors? You never noticed any of that either? I guess we're all just morons. Anyways, literally mid-conversation, Anastasia starts manipulating Torbin. So essentially, he sees himself in his own mind while she's walking circles around him. And this might have been interesting had his major malfunction not just been the fact that he wanted to go home. Like, it's not like she brings up, "Ooh, you once rang up an Xbox as a pack of strawberries at Walmart and loss prevention didn't catch you." Or, "I found that embarrassing photo of you at the Christmas party." Like, no, it's literally just, "You wanna go home?" "Yes, mommy." Like, what the f***? It's that quick too, like literally in the middle of the conversation, he just drops to his knees and his eyes are black. It looks like a D-grade horror movie. Eventually the witches agree, like, just get the f*** out of here. You can come back and test the kids tomorrow. Just leave and take your twink with you. So they pick up Torbin, who's now out of that trance, and they go back. Sol already feels that Osha is destined to be his Padawan. So the next day when May is delivered to do her test first and fails as she's instructed to do, she then explains that that ceremony that they had walked in on was called Ascension. And it was basically, they were going to appoint these two children to be the leaders of their clan. And she uses a specific phrase that I jotted down because I thought it was very important. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny. Kind of like how I'm sacrificing my mental health for the sake of fulfilling my destiny, which is about Star Wars on the internet so that people can attack me for my opinions. We already know that Osha passes that test with flying colors, but apparently the Jedi Council literally told Indara that they could not bring them back to Coruscant. Torbin, having tested the twins' blood, comes to find that they have incredibly high M counts. I hate it here. Basically, they figure out that they are essentially one consciousness that got split into two. A virgins! Guys, see, Disney does pay attention to the lore. This totally wasn't breaking canon and laying waste to Anakin Skywalker's legacy as the chosen one. Does Kathleen Kennedy still have the shooters out on me, or are we good? Torbin, a Padawan who has presumably been trained to be a Jedi to keep his mind at ease and keep his together and stay frosty when things are getting hectic. He goes f***ing postal, hops on a speeder and takes off because now that they've figured out that there's already a virgins, they already found it, now they can report to Coruscant and they can go home. That's literally this guy's whole thing, is just, I really wish I wasn't here right now. Sol and Torbin both break back into the witches' coven while Indara and Kelnaka are on a ship trying to get them to stop being f***ing problematic. At Coral's instruction, May decides to go and shut down the elevators so nobody can get in, and that's when she locks her sister in a cell and starts that fire. Now the problem is that she does start that fire, that is genuinely the situation, but she immediately regrets it because I think she apparently didn't think through, gee, if I light this highly flammable thing on fire and then drop it, it's totally not gonna ignite everything in here, right? I mean, it makes sense that things wouldn't catch fire like that considering they're all made of stone, but they ignite like they're covered in gasoline. Does anybody have an explanation for that? I was bad at science and physics growing up, so if you can explain that to me, I'd love to hear it, because I'm pretty sure that stone just doesn't burn up like that. Anyways, Anastasia was actually very willing to let Osha go, but the other witches didn't want to. So while Sol and Torbin are confronted by Anastasia and Coral, May runs in panicking about that fire she started, and Torbin and Coral look like they're gonna start fighting each other, but then this is when I start losing my shit. Anastasia screams and like turns into dust, like in the shape of a bird, and Sol just turns and shivs her, just impales her, and then I think he's like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't have done that. So Anastasia dies a death that is so terrible and so embarrassing that it's rivaled only by the death of Sofia Coppola in The Godfather 2. This all-out brawl begins at this point, and it's where I can't figure out what's worse. The script, the pacing, the dialogue, the fight choreography. The place starts to fall apart. And so the witches, as one does naturally in a situation of grave danger, they start singing and swaying, because if I was in a building that was coming apart, I know I'd be out here like, come a chameleon. That would be my prime thing to do, would be to start singing. Coral also does the bird dust thing and f***ing possesses Kelmaka. So the Wookiee Jedi is trying to kill his Jedi friends because he's being possessed by a magical space witch. Yeah, listen to that. That's where Star Wars is right now. And it's genuinely f***ing hilarious. Like, if you would detach yourself from the fact that this is Star Wars, this is genuinely f***ing hilarious. So we're literally cutting back and forth from the swaying witches, the f***ing Wookiee Jedi losing his shit, and all of this only stops because Trinity from The Matrix knocks the Wookiee on his ass and just like does this to him long enough where the witches pass out and he goes like, "Oh, Book of Boba Fett scooter kids, perhaps I treated you too harshly." By now, May and Osha are both at risk of falling from opposite bridges. Soul only saves Osha because Disney had to rip off that weird B-movie, The Good Son, with Macaulay Culkin. I think I'm one of like 12 people that watched that movie, but I hope somebody gets the reference. They take Osha back to the ship, and Indara tells Soul that there is no way that he can turn himself into the Jedi Council. If he turns himself in, then he's not gonna be around to train this kid as her Padawan, and he'll have killed her dream. So they keep the story that May basically just lit the whole place on fire. And that's where the episode ends. And as the episode ends, we get this great R&B track. You know the power of two. At the end, literally called from the subtitles, The Power of Two. So that's where Star Wars has gone. This was not only one of the worst Star Wars pieces of content I've ever seen, but it was also one of the worst pieces of media I've ever seen in general. Like, it's such absolute nonsense. It is laughably bad, and I think laughter is actually worse than apathy because you have hatred, which is this is really bad and it offends me on a personal level. That was the Book of Boba Fett. And then you have apathy, which for me was like Ahsoka and most of Kenobi, where it was like, this is so bad that I just don't even care. It's kind of lame. And then you have the Acolyte, where it is so terrible that you get past the point of being mad and apathetic, and now you're genuinely laughing at it. That's how awful this is. Whatever they were on when they wrote this episode, please let me get some and see if I make my weekend more entertaining or some because you have to be high or drunk off your ass or just out of your mind to think that this is something good and worth putting out. In 7 episodes, they have managed to completely derail the love that I had for Star Wars. It was already on thin ice, but this is absolutely awful. And I can't wait to see how it ends. That's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, tune in on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. EST. You can also check out my Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and content. I will add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your thoughts on episode 7 of The Acolyte in the comments below.